work here in the advancement office at Houghton College. This is our third Best Talk panel of the semester, and I'm glad all of you can join us, whether you're listening to the recording or you're here with us live. We do have one more Best Talk panel coming up on March 23rd, and that's going to focus on alumni who are in healthcare careers, and specifically alumni who participated in an accelerated program through Houghton. So 2 with Lake Erie Medical College and 1 with Dewville. So we have alumni in pharmacy and doctor of osteopathic medicine, and someone who is working through their dental degree. So if you're interested in those fields, please join us on March 23rd to hear about these students' journeys, and they're at all different places. This is our first Best Talk panel that we're partnering with a class, and we're grateful to Professor Eliana McHenry for allowing us to do that today. So her managerial accounting students are joining us along with other guests, and thank you for being here. And so I'll let Eliana get started and tell you how to submit questions, and we'll have our panelists introduce themselves. Thanks, Eliana.
Welcome to our accounting panel. Hopefully you learn a lot about accounting if you're not an accounting student, and hopefully you're paying attention if you are an accounting student. If you would like to submit a question, you can send it to me in the private chat, and then I will make sure that we ask those questions as we go through the rest of the panel. I'm going to start us off with a question to get our panelists to introduce themselves and where they're working, that kind of thing, and then we will go from there. If we don't have any audience participation, I will ask a couple more questions just to make sure that we round out the time and we're using our panelists' time wisely. All right? Okay, so the first question is, who are you? Where do you work? And tell us a little bit about what a typical day looks like for you.
Who's starting?
Doesn't matter to me.
All right. I mean, I'll start. My name's Carl Holmes. I graduated at Houghton in 2018. I work for Bondwell Corporation. It's an international company based in France, is where the headquarters is. It has a large presence in Canada, and they just recently pushed into the United States, and that's kind of obviously the branch that I'm working out of in Rochester, New York right now. I also spent my first 2 years out of college doing public accounting at Ernst & Young, one of the big 4 companies, where I worked to get my CPA, get some experience, and then like transferred over into the industry sector. A typical workday, I mean, that has changed a lot over the last couple of years, and especially with all the COVID stuff. I mean, right now I work entirely from home, my apartment in Rochester right now. I guess when COVID first started, that's kind of the shift that took place. And then we had a little bit of a break in time where we were doing, you know, a split 2 days in the office, 3 days at home, something like that. But really at this point and going forward, I really don't see that we're going to be in the office 5 days a week ever again. I think it'll be a split, and it'll kind of be up to people to make their own decisions, whatever they want, because obviously the world has kind of shown that, you know, they can function by working from home. But also, I mean, I think it's a good thing for people to have some human interaction and get into the office, because I think that makes a big difference with all your teams that you're working with and collaboration, stuff like that. But a typical workday, I guess, when I was in public accounting, for Ernst & Young was a client-based job. So I spent a lot of time working with people, you know, at the company that we were auditing, asking them questions, interacting with them, you know, and taking information back from them, working on it, and then, you know, asking follow-up questions. And I would also say that in public accounting, it was a lot more, it depended on the week or the month where I was going to be. So I served a lot of different clients. I was in different places in Rochester. I was in, you know, Buffalo, and then I even took some trips out to Seattle, Chicago, different places to do site visits for companies to work out, you know. So that was a very, I guess you got a lot of different experiences in public accounting, whereas now I'm based in Rochester and I spend the majority of my time working out of our Rochester office. So.
Nice, thanks.
guess I'll go next. I'm Meredith Toombs. I graduated in 2012, and I'm an audit manager at PwC. So I stayed at PwC quite a lot longer than Carl stayed at EY. But I've spent the last, well, I guess 18 months in England. And for 3 years before that, I was in Germany, also with PwC. So I've kind of used public accounting to get around the world a bit. I think, yeah, it's very hard to answer what a typical day is like because this year there's been nothing typical about it. But I'm also in audit, so like Carl, very client focused. And I do a lot of coaching team members, reviewing work papers, but lots and lots of it is client management meetings. And this year it's been a whole lot of crisis management. So, just something going wrong every day, just about. Which is pretty normal actually in public accounting, but I think this year especially, everything has felt like more of a crisis and a little bit more dramatic. So a lot of it is, just dealing with issues and problem solving kind of every day. So I think the great thing about public accounting is no day is really the same as the day before. The bad thing about that is it's also very hard to plan your day. But if you like variety and change and meeting new people and going new places, then public accounting is really great, except for the last year where I've spent the whole thing also working from my apartment. So I've been in the office one time since last March. Otherwise, I've kind of just been here. But yeah, I also think that work life after COVID is going to be nothing like it was beforehand. I don't think we're ever going to be in an office 5 days a week, or if you go into public accounting, I don't think you'll ever be at a client 5 days a week again. I don't think they'll want us there, honestly. So I think it's probably going to be a bit of a hybrid model going forward, which I think actually will make all of our lives a lot better. So I hope you guys benefit from that a bit.
Awesome, thank you.
My name is Kaylee Jentz. I graduated with an accounting and business degree in May of 2019. I absolutely loved my time at Houghton and I still miss it. So I can't wait to be able to actually go back and visit campus like normal. But I'm an audit associate at KPMG. So I've been there for about 1.5 years. And similar to Carl and Meredith, I'm working from home 100% of the time, which is no surprise and will be for quite some time now. If anyone is a fan of the show The Office and you remember the episode where Michael and Holly accidentally say that the Buffalo office is closing, well, I can relate to that because we actually closed our KPMG Buffalo office a couple months back, which was really sad, but at the same time, it doesn't have like huge effects on me now because we would have been home anyway, but it's still a big adjustment. And, like it's already been mentioned, we will never be working in person all the time again. But basically how it works now is that all of us from the Buffalo region are just kind of like coded to upstate New York. And so there's still a presence in Rochester as well. So we're just kind of, put together as an upstate New York group. And then I guess I'll have to repeat the same thing again, that it's very difficult to say what a typical day is. But I guess just to give you an update of where I've been for, say, the past month, we're in what's called busy season because most clients have a fiscal year end of 12/31, which means they have a couple weeks in January to close their books and get their things lined up. And then we just get all of that information dumped on us and we have to test it very quickly. So for February, I was on a large accelerated SEC filer client, which means they're publicly traded and that they have the tightest deadline for reporting. So February was my busiest month of work ever. But I'm happy to say that today is actually my first day back onto a private job that will be a little bit less stress. But I guess to go into more specifics of what I do every day, given that I'm an associate, I have a little bit less client management that Meredith talked about, and kind of just more like in depth with the details in terms of sampling populations and sending samples to the client and doing controls work, which if we get into the nitty gritty in a little bit, I can tell you more about controls, but most people aren't super interested in controls. But So yeah, mostly testing samples and control work, documenting the client's processes. So like documenting how they report their accounts payable or, things like that. But yeah, it's been a really good experience, and kind of similar to this, I found that I've been able to connect and work with KPMG managers that I wouldn't have otherwise, because of the virtual environment, and my February job was so busy that we had to bring in extra managers. So I met them that I wouldn't have otherwise. But I can definitely say that working for a Big Four firm presents really great opportunities. Um, Before COVID, that might have looked like going to training in Florida and having a great time and doing other things. But I can honestly say that even with COVID, the opportunities are endless, and you can speak up and ask for any industry you want to be on, even if you want to switch out of audit and into a different business line. There's a ton of different opportunities, and I'm really glad to say that I did accounting at Houghton and that I decided to go to public accounting.
So our students hear a lot about taxes and how to do taxes for me. So it's great that you guys are talking about auditing a little bit, because we don't really hear a lot of that except for in our auditing classes. All right, so then my next question for you guys is, when you were here at Houghton, what was your favorite course that you took? And then which one or a couple of classes were the ones that prepared you the best for where you are working right now?
Ooh. So which course was my favorite overall, or in accounting?
How about both? Let's do an overall course, and then what was your favorite accounting course?
Well, most of my accounting classes were with Professor Ross, and I really loved her. So I enjoyed all of those. They were great. I think if I went with what prepared me the most for where I am now, accounting is kind of the baseline of what you need to know, and then you learn so much more once you leave. But I think I had an international relations minor, and I took an intercultural competencies class. And I think that one probably prepared me the most for being successful living overseas, because it's all about how to integrate. And you'd be amazed at how many people go on secondment and actually really, really struggle. And a lot of them go home early from time to time. So I think probably, yeah, intercultural competencies was extremely useful. Also, some of the management accounting, well, just kind of management theory of management classes I took at Houghton were really helpful for dealing with different personality types and different management styles, and kind of a lot of what I do now was very applicable to those classes.
Perfect, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Can chime in here. I would say for me, like Meredith mentioned, the baseline of what you need to know for accounting is obviously the accounting classes. I think intermediate accounting was probably my favorite of learning, I guess, everything there is about accounting. And that seems to like translate the most to what I'm doing today. But I see Joseph Miller in here, and he was my business law teacher. So I might have to say that was my favorite class at Houghton. No, I enjoyed taking a Bible class too at Houghton. That was pretty interesting. But as far as the international course, like Meredith said, I mean, hey, that's definitely helpful, because now I never really expected me to be working for an international company, but I'm working with a lot of people from Canada and France. So, they speak a lot of French. I mean, hey, if I knew another language, it'd make things a lot easier. So there's a lot of things that would help you out quite a bit. As far as maybe advice for what classes you should take in the business world, whether it's accounting or business, whatever you guys decide, is I would say definitely learn. I think there was an MIS class that they used to offer, so management information systems. Like I think that might be one of the most underrated things in college, is learning Excel and learning the different reporting systems and stuff like that, because no matter what your position is in business, in accounting, like you're going to be working with technology, and you're going to be working with a lot of different reports and spreadsheets, stuff like that. So it's always good to, I mean, you can never really have enough knowledge, and I guess skill in those areas. So definitely work on those as much as you can before you get there. And that's one good way to impress people, because the older and older the generations get, like the more and more they are impressed with what you guys can do, because it comes a little bit more naturally, I would say, for the younger generations. But so that's my advice.
Nice, thanks.
My favorite accounting course was auditing, which might be a surprise, but then I cannot believe Carl said his favorite was intermediate accounting, because that was the worst. But I loved auditing because it was basically, well, it was my first exposure to auditing, because it's not something that you really learn about in your first 2 or 3 years. But the reason I liked it is because to me, it was kind of like a bunch of puzzle pieces you put together to then be able to say, yes, these financial statements are complete, accurate, no fraud, or, to the best of our ability and our knowledge. But I just thought it was interesting to see the different kinds of procedures that auditors would do to make sure that those numbers are right. And it's weird because, like, back when I was taking that class, I had no idea that I would go into auditing. So I would read about how to send out confirmations, how to do a substantive analytical procedure, which is a mouthful and might sound boring, but it's actually cool because now I can go like fast forward to 2 years later to now, and I've actually done those procedures myself, and learned a lot about businesses as a result of doing those procedures. And then for a non-accounting favorite class, shameless plug, Dr. Mylander, literally anything from him. He is the bomb. My favorite class, I have to pick two. I did two specific classes. One, the entire semester about Switzerland. And then the second one, again, an entire semester on turn of the century, 20th century, Vienna, Austria. And I loved those classes because obviously they were very specific topics, and he just does an amazing job of picking awesome books that we can dig into on those topics, and then just leading really great discussions. So if anybody ever has extra room for a class, I don't know if that happens now, but I do recommend taking a poli-sci class, even if that's kind of out of your comfort zone, because it can be really interesting stuff. And it's like, because now I realize with my job that, I'm not doing anything in relation to political science now. So like your 4 years at Houghton are a really cool time to just dig into some topics that you probably never will in that depth again.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So we've got some questions from some of the participants now. The first two that we have kind of go together. So the first one is, how did you get your first job out of college? And the second one that kind of goes with that is, which relationships do you think it's most important to establish to help you get to the jobs that you want in the future?
Ooh. Those are good questions. I think the number one most important thing you can do to get a job is to get an internship first. And I didn't do an internship with PwC, but definitely it was the internship that I did do that got me a job at PwC. So I think if you can get an internship in accounting, it doesn't matter where. If it's Big Four, great. You'll probably get a job offer out of it. If it's a smaller firm, great. Or if it's an industry, all of it's fine. But definitely you need work experience.
I would definitely echo that. Internship was the first thing that came to my mind as well, because the job that I got, it wasn't directly related to my internship, but it was through the networking and through the connections that I made through my internships. I was down in Atlanta and I did an industry accounting internship, which at the time I didn't think I wanted to do public accounting, and I wasn't sure about getting my CPA. So industry is kind of where I decided I wanted to do the internship. But while I was down in Atlanta doing that internship, for a hospital, I had a manager who was a CPA. She worked in public accounting, and she honestly really encouraged me to go the public accounting route, get a CPA license. And then from there you have, endless opportunity in the business world to do what you want with it. And, and she kind of motivated me to want to do that. And she was willing enough to like set up meetings with me, or for me, with a few people she knew from PwC, from Deloitte, from Ernst & Young. And it was through that and through college, I guess, connections with different people in the business department that help you get those opportunities to get those interviews. So I would definitely say that those are big reasons.
I also was an intern prior to starting as a full-time at my job, and I actually interned with KPMG and then returned for the full-time position. So I had it even easier because I just was locked in with the internship. But I think the best advice I can give is definitely be aware of what connections you have already, because there's probably more than you even realize. And for example, with me, I'm pretty fortunate that my dad is also involved in accounting and business, and so he had some connections that um, allowed me to meet new people. And it's crazy how things work out, because I was actually pretty late to the game to getting into public accounting, because for a while I thought I would need a fifth year to get my CPA requirements, and then I realized no, I actually had enough in 4. So like I was basically a full year behind in terms of the very rigid recruiting schedule that the big 4 firms do. But what happened is my dad had a friend who's a partner at one accounting firm and just so happens to have season tickets to the Bills games with a KPMG partner. And so through that connection, I was able to get connected to that KPMG partner and get interviewed and be accepted as a KPMG intern. And that's not to say that there's not other avenues. I know there's things like Handshake and LinkedIn and, you know, the different ways to get connected, but definitely don't ignore the connections you already have. And I'd even say, even to go beyond that, like don't just wait until you need a job. Like develop those relationships throughout your 4 years so that then when you do maybe need to ask for a favor or a connection, it's not like that's where you're starting your connection and you're just asking for help, but rather you have a maybe a mentor who you've talked to for a couple of years, and then they're more invested in you and can help you find that job.
So another one of the questions, you mentioned your CPA, and we've got a question from one of our more advanced accounting students. So not just from managerial, but some of our upper level students are here too. And they want to know how you met your CPA requirements. So those extra credits after your undergrad and the work experience, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I guess for me, I was a bit like Kaylee. I did mine kind of in 4 years with summers. So I had some credits before I came to Houghton, and then I took summer classes. Most people, when you get to like Big 4, so my start class, most of them did a 1-year master's to get their 150 credits. The nice thing about the 1-year master's is it basically teaches you to take the test. So you know, most people do the 1-year master's, pass the exam, and then start working. The downside of that is it's a bit expensive to do a master's just to be taught to take a test. And that's kind of what I thought. So that's why I took summer classes. And, you know, I was one of, I don't know, maybe there was a handful of us that hadn't passed our exams when we first started working, because basically my last class ended in August and I started work in September. So I studied and passed my exams while working. And actually, the summer after I started working, I took a sabbatical for, I don't know, a month or 2 just to study and take some of my exams. So most people, I would say, do the 1-year master's, but it's definitely doable to do it in 4 years and not go that route.
I too, like Kaylee and Meredith, I did mine in the 4 years as well. That seems to be like a Houghton thing, I guess. But
I think it's
like they
because we
said,
graduate with so many credits.
yeah, exactly. And it's not the norm, like she was saying. Like I was actually one of the only ones that I knew, and not just in Rochester, but when I, got to Big 4, I did my first training down in New York City, and everybody had their masters. And like she said, a lot of people had already passed their CPAs, before they even started working. But for us, it was like, hey, I graduated undergrad, and I started trying to take my CPAs, and they're a lot of work. They're really difficult. They're harder than regular school, you definitely have to put your time and effort into passing those. But I would also say, like, never get discouraged with them, because you can pass them. It's just a matter of putting in the time and effort to do it. And you might feel like you're a little bit behind if you were to, go into public accounting. That's how I felt at the beginning. But then after you pass them, then you're like, oh, I guess I'm ahead of the game because I'm still a year younger than all of these people, So I would echo, I guess, exactly what Meredith said. If you're looking for specifics in terms of like credits and all that stuff, I know there's a lot of details, I guess, that go into like what you need for your CPA, but I know there's a certain amount of accounting specific credits. I want to say when I was there a few years ago, it was like 36 specific accounting credits. You needed a certain number of business credits. You needed 150 total credits, so total credit hours, which is normally, like we were talking about, a master's is usually how you get your 150 credits, but at Houghton, like, it is possible to do that in your 4 years. And then as far as work experience to get your CPA, I think any company that you work for in terms of accounting, they would work with you to get you the proper experience. But if you if you go public accounting, as all three of us did by the sounds of it, they pretty much guarantee, like, if you work there for a year, you're like grandfathered into the proper work experience. So that's another pro, I guess, of going to public accounting. Is it makes the path a lot easier for your CPA, for sure. And they'll often pay for a lot of the study material, which can be very, very expensive, thousands of dollars, and that kind of deters people from doing it in the first place. But, companies definitely want you to pass and want you to have that license. It looks good for them, and they're generally going to pay for that for you. So, Kaylee?
Yes, and I'll add, not only do the bigger firms pay for the materials, which is huge, but typically they also pay a bonus if you pass them within a certain period of time, which I think that's huge. Like, to get a bonus of that size that early in your career is pretty rare. So I would say that's a huge benefit. But not only that, in terms of maybe a short-term benefit, but the earnings potential between having a CPA and not are big. It makes a big difference to have that license. So I would say, it is important to think about that in terms of your schedule and if you want to achieve the 150. I was able to achieve that in 4 years, like Carl laid out with the accounting credits and then the liberal arts credits. With the accounting credits, I was able to just take all of the required accounting classes, and then I made like my own, what was it called? Like, basically a class I made on my own. What is that called? I forget.
Independent study.
Independent study, yes. And I did an independent study, and all I did was I wrote like an 8-page paper on the Enron scandal, which I actually really enjoyed. I read a book that I wanted to read anyways and wrote a book on it, or wrote an essay on it. And that was just a cool research thing to do in my last year. And then in addition to that, I was actually able to earn some internship credits that were coded to accounting based on internships that I had done at an accounting department. So I think the flexibility that Houghton allowed with that really helped me because, like Meredith said, that saved 2 semesters of tuition for me, which is a lot of money too. And then in terms of the liberal arts credits, that was a lot of my favorite classes, like political science, economics. So I would say I think Houghton does a good job of showing that it's a very well-rounded school. And so you might be an accounting major, but you can also be sitting in an international relations class and a poli-sci class. So I couldn't stop talking about the benefit of that. But yeah, I'll just echo the same things that were already said, of just the benefit of the CPA, and just I think the testing really does prepare you to work hard, because the tests are way harder than anything you'll see in a college classroom, and that's how it should be, right? Because not everybody, like, if the test was too easy, then there would be too many CPAs. Like, there has to be a barrier to licensure, and that's what it is. But I would definitely say, if you are interested in public accounting, or even normal accounting, I think that considering the CPA is something that's definitely really important. And if anybody has questions on that, maybe we could get contact info sent after this, but I'd be more than happy to talk to anybody about the process involved with that, because it's still pretty fresh for me.
So if you are listening to this and you aren't going to be near your 150 credits by graduation, because we've got some seniors, don't freak out, because you can still go through and get your master's and do that a different way than I guess the traditional Houghton way of doing it in 4 years. But I myself actually did my master's before I am doing my CPA exam. So there are other ways possible. You don't have to fit all those credits in your 4 years. A question kind of going off of that, do you think that you would need a master's degree in addition to your CPA in order to advance in terms of management or supervising, things like that in your current workplace?
No, you definitely don't. And especially, at least, you know, in the US, the only thing that matters after is your CPA. If you have your CPA, then you really don't need anything else. You know, people get it because they need it for the exam, but otherwise it's not required, and it doesn't really help you. Nobody cares kind of after a point.
Awesome, thanks. All right, so then we've got another question from one of our upper level accounting students. What is one thing that you wish you had spent more time studying or working on while you were in college?
I don't know.
I guess
I
for
spent quite a
okay.
lot of time studying, so I don't think I needed to study anymore.
I spent a lot of time playing sports in college, so I probably could have studied more, I suppose. No, I would say the CPA exams, they were, I would say, the studying that I needed to do during college. But for me, like I mentioned earlier, I think the technology side of it, I don't consider myself, you know, a pro with technology or a pro with Excel, and I think like you can never have enough of that, and then that would be where I would say I could have done more growing in college. I never really played around with Excel for fun, or you know, I didn't practice, you know, all my homework problems or test questions. I didn't do that stuff in Excel, and like doing that probably would have helped me a lot, so looking back on it. But
I think the only thing I'll add is I can't point to anything I necessarily should have like studied more, but I think I'll say that, you know, with accounting classes, typically our homework is like doing math problems, which I remember it's like, well, I'm in the library with my friends and I'm doing accounting problems, but my friend's doing an 8-page paper for biblical theology and someone else is doing a lab experiment, you know, so like the stuff that we do is different, and it's shorter, just a bunch of accounting questions. And I would say, I think with that kind of setup, which is fine inherently, but it can be easy to just like race through it to get the right answers, and not really think more deeply about it. So I think the best thing you can do to get the most out of your classes for accounting is when you're working through those questions or problems, like don't just know the formula or how to do it, but know why you're doing it and why what you're applying is the right way and makes sense from an accounting perspective. Because that will just teach you a lot more, and I think then you can apply that to a lot of different, you can apply that more broadly once you have that knowledge base, as opposed to just like, oh yeah, like this is the number you put in the numerator because I don't know. Like I think just having a better understanding of that stuff can make a big difference later.
Yeah,
Is
actually,
there
I think that's really true. And if you can try and teach it to each other, then if you can actually explain it to each other and understand what each other are teaching you, you will really benefit from that. And that's kind of what a lot of public accounting is really teaching other people. So I think that's actually very good advice, and Carl's as well, because the number one thing that's useful when we get new associates at the firm is if they already know how to use technology. Otherwise, we just have to teach you, and you will benefit and grow much faster if you know how to use things like Excel, or you know, if you know what Ultrix is or Tableau, and just learning those things in advance. Even if you just know what they are, it's better than not knowing anything.
Great. All right, so then I have another question here, kind of relating to our CPA. Do you think it's worth going into accounting without getting your CPA?
I, if you don't mind, I'll answer. I personally, I think it's a personal decision, and I think it's a personal goal and mindset. If you're looking for accounting to be a career path where you want to grow and you want to, climb the corporate ladder, or expand the options that you have in business as a whole, I would definitely recommend the CPA. But if you're the type of person that, like, if you're content with a certain type of job, and you have a certain, like, I guess, salary pay scale that you want to live in, you're gonna max out a lot quicker without the CPA, and that's totally fine if that's the career path that you want to have and that's what's gonna make you happy. But if you want, like, if you have, I guess, the ambition or the expectation that, hey, I want to climb the ladder, I want to give myself more opportunities in the future, then the CPA would definitely be the best route for that in accounting. But it's kind of, it comes back to who you are as a person and, like, what you want, I guess, with your career and what your priorities are.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think it definitely is worth it because there's a ton of accounting jobs, and there's plenty of accounting jobs where you don't need a CPA, and you would be amazed at how many people get out of public accounting and let their CPA lapse. And you'll see lots of people's email footers that say, like, CPA inactive. So they're just telling people, I passed my exam, but I just didn't care enough to keep it active, sort of thing. Um, so I think, yeah, it's definitely a good career path, but Carl's exactly right that you will top out faster than if you get a CPA. So it's really just about what it is you want.
Awesome. Kaylee, do you have anything to add, or are you good?
Yeah, I think that was all good stuff. I totally agree. Not too much more to add, but definitely going off of that, I'd say, yeah, it depends on not what you're looking for in 2 years, but more like 15. If you aren't going to be in accounting, you don't think in 15 years, then you'll have to analyze if you'd have to pay for the exam and stuff, is it worth that payment or not? So yeah, definitely on a personal decision. It doesn't make you a bad accounting professional if you don't have it, that's for sure. It's all about just what your priorities are and where you think you'll be in the long term.
Okay.
There's also the certified managerial accountant. So if you don't want to go into public accounting, you can definitely get a CMA. And I think it's not as hard, and I think it's also cheaper. So there are more certifications than just a CPA.
Nice. Okay, so then we have a question that's kind of near and dear to my heart because I tried public accounting and decided it wasn't for me. So if you weren't in public accounting, which other field of accounting would you choose to explore?
I'd probably work for a startup. Yeah, I'd probably do some kind of managerial accounting for a startup.
Okay.
For me, I guess, I mean, I'm not in public accounting anymore, so I'm in a manufacturing industry right now. I say manufacturing, but it's a vegetables, healthy foods company. Like I said, it's a French company, but they've come, to the United States now, and they basically supply your Walmarts, your Wegmans, your Costco's, basically any of those big retailers, wholesalers, with, like, vegetables and just healthy foods like that. So, I mean, I guess that's the industry I'm in now. I don't necessarily know if that's where I'm going to be forever, or if that's, my end goal. But I guess for me, I've considered different things. Like, I'm more of a local person. I don't know if I want to be in big business forever. I think it was kind of the best route for me starting out, but I think my goal like later on is to move more locally, maybe help smaller businesses, which I guess might get a little bit back more into public accounting, in a sense, doing taxes for smaller companies, or doing audit work, consulting, stuff like that. And then I've also played around with the idea of being a professor, maybe someday, I don't know. And just real quick on that, you guys asked about whether a CPA is something you need, or compared to your master's. I would say that no, like in industry and in public accounting, I would say your CPA, like Meredith said, is absolutely enough. And it would almost be a waste to go get a master's if you can do it in undergrad. But if you ever want to teach, or if you ever want to be a professor, I think getting a master's is something that you might need. I think you can be an adjunct without a master's. Like if you just have your CPA, you could probably come and be an adjunct somewhere. But the bigger the school, the more, you know, they might want a doctorate in accounting. And then like Houghton, I think other schools, smaller schools, like they're going to be, they'd probably prefer a master's and not just a CPA. So I'm assuming that's probably what Eliana did. But
For me, I think this would be kind of outside the accounting realm, but if I had to pick something different, I think I might say like financial planning, like helping individuals with their finances. Just because I do like the client focus of my current job, and I would love to help individuals too, with their finances, as opposed to like what I'm doing now, which is just helping, like being part of a team that's working for a big business. But I think that personal financial planning is a pretty cool career as well.
So we are getting close to the end of our time here. So I want to ask one last question of you. What advice do you wish you heard as a business student before you started working in accounting? I know it's kind of a loaded question, but
I think I would have liked to have been told to focus on internships earlier. I think we start looking too late in general. So I didn't start thinking about it probably until, I can't remember if it was maybe the beginning of my junior year or end of maybe second semester sophomore year. And I really think people should start looking at internships, you know, basically freshman year, and just start kind of like Kaylee said, making those connections. But it's kind of like at the point that you start thinking about it, it's like, I need that now. And it would just, I think, have been useful to have given it some thought earlier. At least it would have been a lot less stressful had I given it some thought earlier.
guess it's my turn. I mean, I would definitely echo that as well. I mean, I was a transfer student, so I didn't spend all my time at Houghton. I will say, I'm not sure what Houghton did, but my other school did press internships as early as freshman year. They started telling us to do that. So I would definitely say that that's important, because like we all talked about, I mean, it sounds like a lot of our connections and a lot of our first jobs came from those internships. And I think maybe another thing would be focusing on interviews and what interviews are looking for. Some of it is a little bit scripted and what they want to hear, but they also do kind of want to hear a personal story and like what you bring to the table that's a little bit different. And I would say that one great thing about Houghton and a smaller school in general is that you can really kind of show them that you can balance a whole lot on your plate. You're not just an accounting student at Houghton, or at least I wasn't, in my opinion, and I know Kaylee wasn't, and Eliana. Like, everybody was involved in a lot of different things, whether it was, you know, the investment center stuff that we did, research. There are a lot of different classes, Bible classes that you can take, sports. Like, you're involved in a lot of different things in a smaller school compared to the kids that come from, you know, your huge schools. And sometimes you feel a little bit overwhelmed by, wow, these people are, you know, maybe they're smarter than me, or they come from like this school that has this good name and whatnot. But it's generally not true. You're just not giving yourself enough credit. You're not giving Houghton enough credit. And honestly, they really do look for somebody that has a broad capability of personality, not just, hey, I know my accounting stuff and that's it. So that would be my advice.
I would just say find what you're interested in and just run with it. I'd say like if your tax class is really interesting to you, like I would say help with VITA, not just once, that's a requirement, but do it more than once. If that's something that you think is really cool and really interesting, and it's something that you would think about beyond school. And then definitely going off of what Carl said, I think that applies to everything on campus too. And I know that might look different now with COVID, but I would still say whatever opportunities you can find and whatever people you can meet are really valuable experiences that you wouldn't get on a bigger campus. And so I would just say, we all know Houghton is a very different school than most. So I would say, like, take advantage of that and see what Houghton offers that other schools don't, and then run with that and just make your experience the most of what you can.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this panel. I learned a lot about all of you, even though I knew a few of you beforehand. I hope that our students and the rest of the people who are listening took a little bit something more interesting about accounting than just numbers. All right, Dan, if there's anything else you need to announce, go for it.
No, just want to add my thanks to yours, Eliana. I appreciate all of you being here and taking some time either from the middle of your day or your early evening out there in Winchester, Meredith. Appreciate it. Wish you all well. And I think if you want to get in contact, I'm sure Eliana can help be that bridge for some of these folks. And know too that there are many, many alumni out there who may be currently where you might be interested in being in the future. And many of them are very willing to chat with you about your plans and what you're interested in doing when you graduate. So thank you to our panelists and for those of you for being here. You can also look back at our best talks from earlier this semester. We've done early on, we did one on education, and then most recently one on data science, where we had a group of young alumni working in data science, and you can watch those recordings on the Best Talk webpage on the Houghton website. And like I said, upcoming is one on careers in medicine, medical related fields, and that's coming up on March 23rd. That's at 7 p.m. But thanks to you all, and this will be the recording will be on our website as well if you want to watch that again. Thanks to all of you.